G'day runners, welcome back to the channel, your one-stop shop for all things running. Want to finally smash your 5k BB but feel like you're hitting a wall? Whether you're stuck at 30 minutes or chasing sub 20, I've got the step-by-step strategy to get you there. Faster, smarter and injury-free. We're going to unpack a super easy step-by-step process for all abilities, how to run a faster 5k and achieve that all-elusive PB. We'll be running through how to figure what time you should be aiming for, how long your training is going to take, the sessions that you need to be running, and then how to bring it all together by avoiding the most common mistakes on race day. When I first started focusing on my 5k PB in the marathon off seasons over the last couple of years, I was stuck around the 20-minute mark. My breakthrough, hill sprints and interval training changed everything. Within months, I was down to 18 minutes and now down to 16 minutes 45. A great place to start is what time should we be aiming for? All right, so let's set some goals here. If you've never run a 5k before, it can be pretty difficult to figure out. So the simplest way would be to run a 5k time trial so that you've got an exact starting point of where you can then improve from. But if that seems a bit too much too soon, a good way to gauge your goal time and the equivalent race pace would be to run a 5k interval session. I'd recommend that you run 5 times 1 kilometre repeats at your targeted race pace, and that should be around 80 to 90% of your maximum effort, with a 90-second rest between each rep. That way it gives you enough time to recover. But remember, you're going to have to maintain roughly the same performance for each of the 5 reps, so give yourself a bit of a chance. If you can hold a steady race pace with all the reps without slowing down too much, you're in the right ballpark. But if you're really struggling to maintain the pace after the 3rd rep, your goal might be a bit too much too soon, so you need to wind it back a bit. Likewise, if it feels too easy, you might be able to aim for a slightly faster goal time too. So if you're aiming to run a 30-minute 5k, you should be running intervals of around 6 minutes a kilometre, or 9 minutes 40 per mile. If you're aiming for 25 minutes, you should be aiming for 5-minute kilometres or 803-minute miles. Or even quicker at 20-minute 5Ks, you'll be looking at 4-minute kilometres or 626 per mile. Here you can see some of the paces that you'll need to run throughout the race to finish in an exact time that you're aiming for. And I'll also place a link in the summary to a more exact calculator which I found useful. Ultimately, I'm always of the opinion though that if you're unsure, it's better to adopt a bit of an aim high, shoot low type strategy, where you train to a slightly faster pace than you might be capable of. Providing that comes race day, you need to understand that you might have to dial that back a little bit if you haven't quite caught up to that pace. Okay, so we now know what time we should be aiming for, but how long will it take and what improvements can I expect to see? So we need to work backwards from the specific date as to when you want to actually achieve the PB. Setting yourself a target event like a parkrun, I think, is always a pretty good idea. That's where you have other people running around you to give you that added motivation and pretty much pull you across the line. Ideally though, we should be allowing between 8 to 10 weeks of consistent training, and that's incorporating the different types of training that we'll be coming on to in a minute. Any less, and there's a good chance that our body won't have adapted enough to make it. Any longer, we risk plateauing and wasting weeks of training and just kind of spinning our wheels. If we're able to run once or twice a week, we should expect to see some gradual improvements. But if you train 3 to 5 times a week, you can push for a much more aggressive improvement. It'll be easier though for a beginner runner with a higher time to shave off a larger amount of that time than a more advanced lower time runner, who's pretty much close to their maximum potential. So overall, if you're running once or twice a week, you're likely going to see less an improvement than you would if you were running 3 to 5 times a week. So the frequency here is pretty important. Okay, so we've got our time that we're aiming for. We know how long it's going to take to achieve this time. Now we need to understand what the specific workouts we need to do to help us actually achieve the PB. A really important point is that this is going to be targeting you running at some pretty serious speeds. So it's absolutely essential that you are warmed up fully before you start any of these sessions to avoid an injury. I like to warm up having done around 10 to 15 minutes of relatively light zone 2 style running. That gets the body moving, gets it warm, throwing a couple of strides here and there, get the legs opened up, stretching your muscles under that lower intensity than what you're going to be doing throughout the main session. Now we're going to throw ourselves right in the deep end here. We're going to start with hill sprints. And we're going to target around 10 times 30 seconds uphill sprints with jog down recoveries. Beginners, you could probably look around doing 8 reps with a walk down recovery. A more advanced runner, you could get up to 14 reps with a floating recovery. That's going to really target our anaerobic capacity and our what's called our lactate tolerance. And essentially that's training our body to cope with pretty high intensity efforts, and that allows us to determine how much we can sustain before fatigue sets in. Now you're not looking for a super steep hill here. You're really looking for somewhere you're going to be able to ride a bike up, and that will be enough. Now the next session is actually probably my favourite, and that's kilometre repeats. I'd start with around 5 or 6 1K repeats at your target race pace and give yourself about a 2-minute recovery. A beginner, you could probably start with 4 1K repeats with a slightly longer recovery, perhaps 2.5 minutes. And a more advanced runner, you could be looking at around 8 1K repeats with down to about a 75-second recovery. Now this type of workout targets what's called our VO2 max, and that is essentially improving our body's ability to use oxygen efficiently and sustain high intensity aerobic work. I find the best place to do 1 kilometre repeats is somewhere like your typical running loop that has a flat part to it, that doesn't have any sharp turns in it, that kind of thing. Or actually a cricket pitch or a football pitch that you can run around the edge of. So with this last interval session, we're going to cut down the distance a bit and then increase the frequency and introduce 400 metre repeats. So start at 12 400 metre repeats at slightly faster than race pace with about a 90-second recovery. If you're a beginner, I'd start at 8 reps with a 2-minute recovery. And if I was more advanced, I'd start at 16 reps with a 60-second recovery. Now this helps with what's called our speed endurance, and that bridges the gap between that first workout with the hill repeats and the second workout with the 1K repeats. And this will target both our aerobic and anaerobic systems. It's also going to get you used to running at faster than race pace, so that when we do get round to it, we're going to feel much more comfortable. A top tip for this one is that a cricket pitch or a football pitch or a soccer pitch is about 400 metres around the boundary. So if you have an oval or a pitch near you, it's a good place to do it. So we should be mixing up these workouts throughout the block, but doing at least one of them as a minimum each week. Probably no more than twice though. This isn't a huge amount of training volume like you'd be doing in a marathon, but the intensity of these sessions do carry a higher chance of getting injured. So we want to supplement the workouts with suitable rest days, ideally afterwards throughout the week, with as much steady zone 2 running as possible too. I'd also be incorporating some slightly longer 8 to 12 kilometre type runs depending on your level, and then you'll be really hitting the mark. But listen to your body, and if it's too much to do 2 interval sessions but you still feel like doing some extras, you may be able to handle what's called a tempo run. I'd suggest after warming up a 20-minute comfortably hard session at 80 to 90% of your maximum effort. But I can't stress enough that you need to listen to your body. Err on the side of caution. If we feel fatigued and not recovered enough, there's much more for us to lose than there is to be gained by doing 1 extra session in the week. I'm super keen to hear your current 5K PBs, so drop them in the comments. Let's see how fast we can get over the next 8 to 10 weeks, and then come back and let us know how you've all got on. So we've got our time that we're aiming for, we know how long it's going to take to achieve this time, we know the workouts and the amount of training that we need to be doing over the block. Now we need to know how to pull it all together on race day. In the lead up, give yourself 2 to 3 days of easy, low intensity running, with perhaps a day off beforehand altogether. So when the magic day comes, your body's fully recovered and you're feeling tip top, as you're going to be putting absolutely everything on the line. There's no need to be specifically fueled in for the race. Just a small simple breakfast will do. And please, please, please make sure you arrive at the venue with plenty of time to spare. You don't want to be increasing your heart rate, your stress levels, because traffic, when you could have left 5 minutes earlier. This is going to be the most intense level of effort that you're going to give throughout any point of the entire training block. So it's absolutely vital that you give your PB attempt the respect it deserves and you spend enough time warming up like you would have done throughout the block. By now you should have ingrained in your mind your target race pace. But if you don't, a good tip is simply to write on the back of your arm or on the back of your hand next to your watch so that you don't forget it during the race. Even if you do know it, it can act as a pretty good reminder every time you look at your watch to make sure that you're on your target race pace. In terms of strategy, I'm always of the opinion that you should try to stick to race pace for pretty much every kilometre. Don't worry if there's a few little hills and turns here and there. If you drop a little bit of time, we're going to be able to have a little bit left in the tank at the last 500 metres so that we can really kick as hard as we can and make up for that time and some. A good analogy is to think of your body as having a limited number of matches to burn. And each match represents an extra effort, like a surge, attacking up a hill, pushing the pace a bit. Once you burn all your matches, you're going to be out of fuel and your performance will start to diminish. And this is what happened to me recently, where I got a bit too excited and went out far too quickly and blew up towards the end. Picture this, you blast out the gates, you're feeling amazing. First kilometre, fast. Second kilometre, I'm flying. But then, bam, by 3K, your legs feel like lead, your PB dreams are fading and the day's all over. This is why pacing is everything. And it's so important to keep an eye on your pace, especially earlier on. Ultimately though, if everything goes wrong on the day and you get caught up in the emotions of it all, don't worry and don't beat yourself up too much. There'll always be another race around the corner, and the block that you have under your belt will stand you in much better stead leading into the next race. If you want to check out my most recent 5k attempt, you can do so here, along with some extra pointers to help you on the race day. Good luck, let us know your old and your new PBs in the comments, and remember, don't go out too quickly. Ta-ra.